speak with you all. And I normally have done this session in 60 minutes, so this will be the microwave version in 45. And I'm consciously revisiting my work with Karl Ulrich Schnabel, who the vast majority of this presentation is based on. He wrote the book Modern Technique of the Pedal in 1950. If you're looking for this book, it is out of print usually, so you can find it through your library loan or through the Schnabel Foundation when it comes out from time to time. And then more recently, I've had the opportunity to work with Seymour Bernstein, and I'll probably show this book again, Chopin interpreting his notational symbols. I really recommend this highly. We'll be referring back to this later in the presentation. And I wanted to say I usually have the vast majority of an audience as pianists. However, I understand there are some non-pianists here, and I wanted to say, after hearing the presentation with the commission composer and discussing the role of the pianist, that it's helpful for any instrumentalist or singer to understand, anybody who works with piano, that how resonance may affect your performance as well. Multiple times where I've worked with pianists or teams, duos usually, but often it can be trios up to quintets and beyond, how the resonance of the piano affects other instruments too. Sometimes, even in recitative sections of singer, I'll instruct the pianist to keep the pedal down so that it actually aids the singer's sound and other overtones and resonance is enhanced that way. So, as I said, the topic is balancing clarity with resonance and with this artistic pedaling. So you're going to note that most of the examples are from advanced piano literature, but no matter what level, if you're a piano teacher, if you teach more beginners, intermediates, it's the same sort of techniques, it's just demonstrated through this particular literature. And I've had reports from teachers of all levels of students and all abilities themselves for playing that talk about how this really opens up imaginative thinking and creativity of the piano. So, a couple of quick things. You have a handout, and well, first I'd say I was fortunate to work with Karl Ulrich Schnabel, attend a few of his master classes, and then to work with him privately. He also advised me through part of my doctoral work. I had gotten approved, in addition to when you go to the firing squad at your oral exam at Peabody, you get to present 3 topics first, and I led off with pedaling in the music of Franz Schubert. I later heard that in the meeting that was a large meeting of about 15 faculty, where this was discussed and whether they would approve these topics, that a pianist said, that's not a real topic. So I think that's so interesting because that shows how pedaling just wasn't really respected. And this is, that was probably in the 1990s, whereas Mr. Schnabel wrote and said, little has been written, said, or taught about the use of the pedal. While we can and should learn by listening which effects are preferable and whether the desired effects are realized or not, the ear alone cannot teach us specific methods and means by which these effects are attained. Well, we see that that's still the challenge even today, nearly 70 years later. I won't read Boris Bergen's quote. I direct that to you at the top right-hand corner of the handout so that it goes straight to music, although there are a couple of quotes that are not on there that are short. Recently read a couple by Paul Polai. He said, quote, "You cannot get the sound of the piano without the pedal." And he also said, "There are 4 ways to get color at the piano: articulation, dynamics, voicing, and pedal." And then the most famous quote, perhaps of all, is by Anton Rubinstein, which is that the pedal is the soul of the piano. So today, we don't have the normal, I have a keynote that goes along with this, but thought we didn't have any technology, not sure if I could interface, but I prepared it to do it without. And so there's an oversight with the handouts that you have. I didn't bring my computer. So I only discovered it was here. I'm sorry, I was about to say that the techniques that are on here, on your handout, are not listed individually, so I encourage you to have something to jot down what corresponds with the things that are on the front page. So, for example, at the beginning of the piece, that one actually is not even, I don't even have an example for that, but I'll guide you through the ones that do have examples and for which technique they are being demonstrated. So, with that in mind, let's go to the first example is when we beginning of a piece, when we play, we often, habitually, pianists will play a note and then pedal after it. So for example, like this. So by doing that, you're actually, what Mr. Schnabel says, is that we, quote, always rob ourselves of the aid of the pedal just where its powers for enriching the sound are the greatest. So instead of that, listen to when I have the pedal already down. There is quite a bit more resonance. I'll do the other one again where I play it and then pedal right afterwards. So this is the opening of the Brahms Rhapsody in B minor, so it's already down. We've already set the instrument vibrating, and so there's already power at your disposal. A really obvious place for that happens within the internal part of the piece is the Chopin Scherzo in B-flat minor. This one is much more obvious still, because if you play this note at this passage, I'll play it, not how I want to play it, but so just play the F alone, and then pedal right after it. Okay, listen to that. Now I'm going to put the pedal down first. The difference is huge. It's like, so in different registers it may affect things differently. This actually ends up giving us another possibility because we play this passage. What I did here is previewing a technique that I'm going to overlap with there, and that is that normally we have this happen in slow motion. You do the same thing, you leave space and then pedal this. It happens very quickly, obviously. But when there's a sudden change in dynamics, you can actually, right here, in slow motion, and I have the pedal down, and I'm going to play it, so a tempo would be it. And you're not losing the resonance from the beginning. So moving on to the first example that's on your sheet, which is from the second movement of the Tempest Sonata, Opus 31, number 2. And here we have an example of pedaling before the note again. So let's see, after pauses, which would have been similar to the Chopin. So this spot here, I'll jump to the key spot where you see the G with the forte. If I just play this, and normally we hear this. So we've lost the resonance again. So I'll play the passage with the pedal going down before I play the G. Such as in the Funeral March movement from Opus 26 by Beethoven. If you have, in this case, you'll hear what I do after the staccato. I'm going to put it down first as opposed to playing and then changing afterwards. So here it is, after staccato, but pedaling early. it's not noticed, it's just another arresting effect. You get this. It's just a lot more power at your disposal. So moving on, another spot is in the Brahms Waltz, Opus 39, number 5 in E major. You can see from there that Mr. Schnabel is pedaling. So far we've had mostly these are demonstrations of full pedals, so we'll get partial pedals soon. And so the example marked grazioso, we normally will hear something like this where it's a pedal on almost every quarter note, or perhaps every quarter note, even on the upbeat.
First two notes, a fifth before you have to release. So actually,
which seems to be what he's indicating. So. Two extra wrong notes in there, sorry. But the opening of, interlude of the Brahms B-flat concerto, also how do we manage to fit these in? Usually with the bass resonance, it's not such a problem. So change right around in there to hang on. Of course, we actually hang on just for a few milliseconds to my lower note on that as well. Okay, this brings to, if you look at the notation here, I'm just checking my time. Okay, that of the Beethoven Third Concerto, Opus 37, that squiggly line is Mr. Schnabel's notation for the vibrating pedal. Well, his point is that if you try to pedal that, if you try to pedal every 8th note, it'd be smudged. You try to pedal every 16th note, maybe it would work, but maybe abstractly. But the idea of vibrating pedal, as we'll see another example after this too, is to pedal in a way that's not trying to have the foot coincide with the hand. So you're just basically fluttering the pedal. Some people do call it a fluttering pedal as well. And so instead of having, because if you did full pedals in any place, it's just too much resonance. But if you did no pedal, I was going to say, and you'll hear in some other instances, that there's some resonance in the hall like this and others that are resonant. But I noticed already in practice that there are some in partial pedals that wouldn't need much pedal in this particular hall, but there are others that clearly do. In this case, I think the vibrating pedal is an elegant solution. So. And let's see, another one would be from the Tchaikovsky concerto. Occasionally you'll hear somebody play this passage like this with no pedal. You actually get a good balance of resonance and clarity. And so, let's see. So that brings us to the partial pedals. And if you see that example from Mendelssohn, that shows the kind of notation that Mr. Schnabel used. So he used dotted lines for partial pedals. So what are partial pedals? Well, if you haven't ever looked at the strings really closely, it's a great thing to experiment with, is to put your foot down and to notice what happens when you just barely put the, engage the pedals and they start to lift off the strings until you eventually get to a full pedal where they're completely released. And so there's a whole world there, and just so you know that the determinations or the notation of quarter, half, 3/4, these are all approximate. They do not have anything to do really with your foot. It has something to do with your foot, but it's like 1%. It's all with your ear. It's gauged by your ear. But I did find that when I was doing my work with Mr. Schnabel that my foot became much more adept, and it's something you do have to practice. And it's different on different pianos. This is a Yamaha. It was different than playing it on the Steinway. I felt like this demonstrated better of the two pianos for today. But a good example of this is any scalar passage, or Schnabel I think also liked, as I do, the opening of the E-flat Impromptu by Schubert. So without any pedal, that would be. So in this hall, we still hear a bit of resonance. If you use much pedal, you can start to get to a point where it does start to feel like it's smudging together. So without, so the way to experiment is with any scale. I'll just play the opening of this piece, and with no pedal. There's actually, I can hear a certain extra ring in this hall, but if you, depending on what acoustic you're in, you may not have any. It might just go like doing this wah, and here it kind of goes, so, but I would experiment even here. And so that little extra after ring in English that he called nachklang. So we'll hear as we go to half pedal what the difference is, but it's one that it doesn't hang around for very long, but it's enough that you do hear an after ring. So something. song. This is just from the end of it. I think this hall actually works pretty well without any pedal, and it gives you a quarter pedal already. But I'm still going to be listening all the way to this example. Let's see. I add a little bit to these chords as well. So just inspiring you to experiment with this on your own as well. I think I'm going to skip over the example from Opus 31, number 3, but I will play the example from the Tchaikovsky Concerto second movement, where the quarter pedal can add resonance. Again, in this hall, I think it's not going to be bad. I think I still want a little bit more, so maybe I want about 3/8 pedal. This is the passage. Without any pedal, it would be any of the sustain pedal would be like this. So to my way of thinking, that sounds right. And if we used full pedals, that's too much resonance. So somewhere in between there, we could have enough that's going to add some sort of The next one in your handout, I think we're on page 4 now in the middle, is Opus 73, which is the Emperor Concerto first movement. And this passage right here with no pedal would sound very dry. Right? And with a full pedal, it would sound like this. So for me, that's really, really thick pedaling. And I did that thing with my mouth earlier. That's what I show my students. It's like, that's like going, it's just too much resonance, and it's not subtle. You don't get a subtle change between the dynamics. So when you're working with a half pedal, remember we worked with the scalar passage to find a quarter pedal. That already has a little bit more after ring. But once you do it in a harmonic passage, so this is a good passage, you can do it with any arpeggio. Starting to bring out a little low. So I'd say with the one I have here, somewhere around here. So that it's there, you can hear that there's a level in between there where you can really balance the clarity and the resonance. Similarly, at the last movement of the Moonlight Sonata, Opus 27, number 2, you're able to play with, if this has no pedal, it's okay, it's a little motoric, it doesn't have the same sort of finesse and nuance of this. If you use full pedals, it's clearly too much, it doesn't sound nuanced at all. So somewhere in between the half pedal works out very well. But spot the second movement with no pedal. That just sounds really amateurish, I think, without any pedal. If you put a full pedal down, though, you've lost the staccato. So somewhere in between the half pedal is a great effect. In your next page, top of page 5, you see that the Chopin Polonaise in E-flat minor, Opus 26, number 2. Here, he felt that it's possible to distinguish the notes of different lengths when played staccato. So he thought you could do it basically just through your, I was suggesting earlier that you might do that with the length of your attack stroke as well. But you can actually do both. So here's, you can see in his notation, he's using, those are mostly half pedals. Yeah, we see the sort of dotted line there, a sort of dashed line, I should say. So. That brings us to the 3/4 pedal. So the 3/4 pedal, I often use this technique, and I remember the first time using it consciously, that afterwards I had 3 different people after I played performance of Auf dem Strom at the Science Festival. It's a piece by Schubert for, in this case it was soprano and horn and piano. And 3 different people said, it sounds like a forte piano. And I think that's the case because when we often play on this instrument, which Schubert would not have known, we often hear a full pedal like this, full, maybe no pedal. This is very opening in the longer fantasy, so you have like, or if you had a full pedal throughout, it's just going to be kind of cacophony, or at least chaos. It's a lot of resonance, you know, for if you ever played any piano back from around Schubert's time. So again, let's start from the beginning and say, that's with no pedal. And then I'm just going to keep adding a little bit of pedal to try to lift the dampers. It seems like we're still about a quarter, 3/8 or so. It seems like we're now about half getting that extra resonance. And so now this here, maybe about 3/4. If I go all the way, you'll hear that. So backing off again, let's say somewhere around here. So again, another example for that is the Chopin F major ballade. And this is where we get to Chopin's pedaling, and Seymour Bernstein talks very eloquently about this, makes the case that Chopin was actually meticulous in his pedal markings. And yet, most of us, I know I've played this way a lot of the time, but you know, at a certain point you think, well, that's a crazy pedal marking, that's great, I'm just going to ignore that. Whether it was a conscious decision or not, but I think it's very common people do it. But the more I worked with Seymour and looked at his book, and here's the other advertisement for it, Chopin Interpreting His Notational Symbols. This has not just important information about pedaling, but also about hairpins. And so, as I feel pretty confident that there's at least one of you that has not heard about the latest research about hairpins, I'm going to digress and share that because that's actually, I can say it's changed my life. I only heard about it before I was about to play the Rachmaninoff cello sonata just about 5 years ago. And I met Seymour Bernstein then and befriended him, and he quotes the passage in his book about how one of Clara Schumann's students, Fanny Davies, she had the score of Brahms' C minor trio. Brahms wanted to rehearse this trio with Joachim and Hausmann, but he didn't have his own score. He called Clara on the cell phone, of course, and said, somehow he got a hold of Clara and asked if she had the score. No, Fanny did. She could loan it to you, but the price that Clara extracted for him is that Fanny would be allowed to attend the rehearsal. Well, this event is huge in history. For all of us here, if you have not heard this yet, I'm still excited about it 5 years after hearing it the first time, because certain things I found that I was doing with hairpins of composers that I say are in the know. Because not all composers use hairpins this way. Most of us were taught that this is crescendo and this is diminuendo. But more and more we find that there's so many examples, and Seymour points out many of them, that you might have Chopin having this and he'll have diminuendo in the middle of that. Did I have that right? Sorry. Diminuendo in here for you all. Or crescendo as it's going this way. And so what does that mean? Well, the conclusion basically is, as I in extensive emails with Seymour afterwards, is that something special is happening. He said yes, because it basically comes down to rubato. But what does rubato mean? And so Fanny Davies wrote how, like Beethoven, Brahms was most particular with his marks of expression, always as few as possible. Should the means of conveying the inner, should be the means of conveying the inner musical meaning. The sign, hairpin, as used by Brahms, often occurs when he wishes to express great sincerity and warmth, applied not only to tone but to rhythm also. He would linger not on one note alone, but on the whole idea, as if unable to tear himself away from its beauty. He would prefer to lengthen a bar or phrase rather than spoil it by making up the time in a metronomic bar. Anyhow, I just wanted to say that that's what else is in this book. Going back to Chopin, this example, if you were to play the opening of the Presto con fuoco of the F major ballade with a full pedal, I'll play it just a little under tempo. Obviously, you get to come off of it and play the next lick after that. But that's kind of that's what happens in my ears when I hear that passage. But if you come back to that level of here, where the rest of it is there, then you have something that probably is much closer to the playels and errars that Chopin would have played himself. Moving on to another great effect is the forte piano. So the forte piano, the most famous forte piano I know of is the opening of the Pathetique Sonata. How many people here are have adjudicated pianists in any case? I'm just curious. I mean, a lot of people have adjudicated pianists. So, and many of you have heard adjudicated the Pathetique. How many times do we hear